So, Majority Report, they brought up some old clips of Sam debating Destiny, and I kind of realized that I had never seen that debate. And also, it took place well before I even had a YouTube channel. So, I kind of wanted to just check it out and kind of react to it. So, let's see how this debate went.
He now is going out and monetizing it. It's gross. And you and I can disagree on that, but nothing I'm saying is factually incorrect whatsoever.
It's not just. It's not just. Hold on, Sam. This is such a.
You pretended. You came up with a hypothetical, accusing me if it was a different race that I would be so ecstatic about it, I would be guzzling their buckets of cum.
If I said that George Floyd died after being arrested for trying to buy something with counterfeit money with fentanyl in his system, do you think that that's okay to say, even though factually everything I just said was correct? Or would you say, well, hold on, the framing here is a little bit dishonest? So I emailed you relating to Rittenhouse stuff. Before we dive like too deep into things, I guess something that I've been kind of noticing is like broadly occurring across the United States.
Oh, you made Sam's screen really big.
I've noticed that there is like there's a really big fixation on changing processes and focusing on processes as being broken to kind of affect change legislatively or whatever. And it seems like people have kind of given up on ever having like a cohesive United States where we can kind of agree on some things again. So like, for instance, people will talk about like getting rid of the filibuster, completely changing how we gerrymander, rebalancing the Senate, making Puerto Rico a state, getting rid of the electoral college. Like these are like where all the focus is. And we've kind of just like given up on like, there's no way that we're ever going to agree on certain things anymore. So I guess when I have conversations with people, especially people that I disagree with, conservatives, I usually try to start from a point of like common understanding, like, okay, what are some things that we do agree on that are real? And then from there, we kind of like move to other conversations, I guess. Does that make sense?
Right there is how you debate.
I don't necessarily agree with your character.
Like, I hate to say, like, that's a great way to debate. I kind of have... I'm just going back to high school debate class with this one because that's like one of the first rules that you kind of like you learn is how to have common ground with your opponent and then kind of start making your points and then trying to kind of bring it back to common ground and also then ceding ground. Like it is kind of a, give and take situation when you do a debate, which we've kind of forgotten.
Characterization, the premise to do that. But it's not, the filibuster's been changed before, I think probably 3 or 4 times, at least more. Mm-hmm. It was changed a year ago to raise the debt ceiling. I don't think that's as dramatic of a process change. And people have been talking about getting rid of the Electoral College for at least 25 years. I remember talking about it in college. That would have been 35 years ago.
I don't mean to say any of those ideas are necessarily bad. It feels like people feel like that's where the 100% of the fight is on changing those institutions rather than, and then like the whole media landscape has kind of been given up. We've all kind of like dug into our holes and those guys aren't going to be convinced. We just have to figure out how to change the process enough to get whatever we want legislatively done.
It's kind of crazy that we've already
hearing a lot more about that is because
we've already kind of moved past that in 2024. It's only been 2 years? Yeah, this was in July 2022. So
I think it's inarguable that we are as close to minoritarian rule as we've ever had in this country. If you look at how many people are represented by the Republicans in the Senate versus the Democrats, you're going to see tens of millions of
the Electoral College proves that point
of unbalance there. That in a 50-50 Senate, you have literally 40 million, I think, more Americans represented by the 50 Democrats than the 50 Republicans.
That too.
You've seen 2 out of the last 3 presidential elections that elected a Republican on not without a majority, without a plurality of the votes. You're seeing, gerrymandering that leads to a disbalance in votes in places like Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. Those actually have been fixed because of the state Supreme Courts, but in the past where more than 50% of people vote for a Democratic candidate and the Republicans have 65% of the representation there. And when you look at the Supreme Court, people have been wanting to reform that for a long time as well, but it's, I think, particularly problematic where
Man, he really does have like really bad ADD because like you can kind of tell that he's trying to listen, but he keeps like fidgeting with stuff. Give me 1 second. Alrighty, I had to let my dog out, so now we can continue. Sorry about that. Dogs.
You have those two presidents who didn't win a majority of the votes have placed the six Republican or Supreme Court nominees on there. So
yeah, and I would even point to Garland as like even a more egregious example of like a destruction of a process to get another conservative justice on the Supreme Court.
Well, absolutely. Mitch McConnell playing that, oh, we can't, in good conscience, put a Supreme Court nominee on the ballot during an election year, and then does the exact same thing and just goes, oh, well, we only meant Democrat.
I absolutely agree. Like I said, I'm not saying that any of these institutions are infallible or beyond change or intractable. We can't do anything about them. I think that all of it should be open for conversation. But would you agree that we are historically, as a people, independent of our institutions, like divided more than we probably ever have been due to the acceleration of like technology moving us into different groups?
I wouldn't say ever. We did have a civil war where 500,000 people died.
That is true.
That I would say was a little bit more of a division, but I think certainly in the post-world era, without a doubt, we are as divided as possible. I mean, in 1950, the complaint was that there was virtually no daylight between the two parties, and that was a complaint. I mean, so yeah, we are, but that is the nature of politics, I think.
Sure. I kind of agree with the nature of politics, but I feel like the technological aspect and then the kind of the as much of a capitalist as I am, I think for-profit media combined with like the entertaining parts of it, combined with all the technology, has like accelerated these two worlds apart, such that like this kind of like urban-rural divide in the United States, really across the entire Western world, is pretty unreal in terms of differences in beliefs between groups of people. Not just differences in beliefs in terms of what's right or wrong, but differences in beliefs in terms of like the reality of what's actually happening in situations. I think that's like my biggest worry, is it feels like we live in totally different realities now, completely.
I think there is no doubt that technology has
but you
exacerbated.
objectively have one side that keeps rewriting, whether it be history or they just keep rewriting what's actually happening right now. As far as just, see it like, oh, this is the way that I see it, therefore this is how it is, instead of trying, like, there is no, coming together to just be like, oh, this is what is actually happening. Now you have so many conspiracy theories just popping out of anywhere. I mean, it happens on the left too, so this isn't just exclusive to the right.
But this dynamic, the rural, urban dynamic, I can tell you that 20 some odd years ago, I went down to Cuba. My then wife was doing a documentary, had a no-fac license, so it was perfectly legal. But at that time, what Castro would do is he would bring police in from the rural areas to police in Havana because of that rural-urban divide. And I mean, so, and I can assure you the technology, the communications technology there was not, first of all, it was 20 years ago, so we didn't have, but there was no internet per se there in the way that we understand it. And so, I mean, I think, but there's no doubt technology exacerbated it. It heightened the gerrymandering, I think, too, to make it so efficient. But I would agree with all that. But yes, we are highly polarized.
Okay, so with the broader, the macro picture out of the way, looking at the microscopic stuff. So there are a lot of things that get brought up by mainstream and alternative media where I feel like the messaging can be okay, but it's poisoned because all of the facts beneath it.
Just an aside, this is at 1.25. He is speaking way slower than he usually does.
Are wrong. And when those facts are wrong, I think you lose the ability to communicate any of your broader messaging to like a wider audience. I think a really good example of this is, I think Joe Rogan was highly irresponsible for having so much like bunk medicine introduced to huge audiences on his show, like ivermectin. But when CNN starts saying things like ivermectin is just a drug for horses, it's only horse paste. Well, I mean, like one Google search away, we can see that's not true.
Yeah,
and then
it's
all
a
of a sudden,
dewormer.
Joe Rogan is spreading bad information about medicine. That message, which is true, becomes undermined, I think, because people are getting some of the facts wrong.
Yeah.
And then now coming more specifically, I feel like with the Rittenhouse stuff, I feel like Rittenhouse is pretty cut and dry a lot of different ways, but I still hear people get a lot of the kind of like facts or analysis, in my opinion, like really wrong. So I think the thing I want to talk to you about is there's like three main points that I'll see if I can move you on any of them. Number one is I think that the riots in Kenosha were literally propagated by fake news. They should have never happened. I think that Rittenhouse had just as much reason to be in Kenosha as any other person that was there. I think that all of the Rittenhouse killings were the two, and then the one shooting the guy's bicep were all in self-defense and had nothing to do with defending property. These are 3 points that I see repeated the opposite way by left-leaning mainstream.
No, because he didn't have the right to carry that gun. He was 17 years old. He crossed state lines with it. No, that's kind of fucked up because that's just ignoring the blatant like laws that he did break in order to do what he did. And on top of it, I have a feeling that because I don't have a feeling, I'll just be honest. I saw the clip where Sam did say like, yeah, well, no matter what, he's a killer. Like, plain and simple. You may not be able to apply murder to him, but he is a killer. Just factually.
And alternative media over and over and over again. I think that all three are like clearly wrong.
I also think that to blame the media on the actual like the riots themselves, that's a little. I don't agree with that.
Okay. I mean, the first one in terms of you don't agree with the Kenosha protest seems to me to be, I mean, largely irrelevant in terms of Rittenhouse, in my estimation. I mean, I don't want to litigate whether people should have been upset and should be upset about policing in this country relative to black people in particular. Well, I mean, that to me is, and you can argue that the Kenosha protests were set off by Blake's killing.
Mm-hmm. Blake's shooting, right?
Shooting, sorry, mm-hmm. And I guess he's paralyzed. Mm-hmm. And you could argue that it was just that, without any of the context of the protests that have been going on across the country, mm-hmm. and the building, literally decades. I mean, I would tell this story for years on my show. When I was in Straight Entertainment, I did a sitcom called The Show. And it was a white head writer on an all-black variety show. Mm-hmm. And one of the guys I
didn't know he was part of that.
Worked with was a guy named Chris Spencer. And Chris, we went back to his house at a break during shooting or rehearsal or whatever it was. And we pull into his garage in West Hollywood. And we get followed as we come in by his buddy in a Range Rover. And at that time, that was like if you were successful in LA, you had a Range Rover. And this was in the mid-90s. And the guy comes in, he's like, thank God you were there. I was being followed by the cops again for the 4th time this week, because they pulled me over 3 times to check and see if this was my car. And he said he had called the police department and spoke to a sergeant and was like, is there a sticker I can get that says this is my car? And the cop said, are you black? And he said, yes. And he said, there's really nothing I can do for you. And so, I mean, this has been going on, well, far before that.
Long time.
But certainly, at least in terms of our lifetime, has been going on and on. So I think you can say people should not have been upset by the shooting of Blake, and that was the only reason why they protested, and they protested on false grounds. But I mean, I don't even think that's worth litigating. People can make their own determination as to whether those protests were justified.
Okay,
go
ahead.
As far as the second one that you said was...
Can we move through one at a time, I think? And then
Sure.
Yeah. So on the first one, so when I'm thinking of like how I want to deal with a particular thing, I usually try to think of like, well, what happens on the other side? I want to be able to, have you heard of the term stochastic terrorism? It's like this idea that like if you give enough of a certain type of rhetoric, even if you don't directly call people to violence, there's probably going to be some violence that happens. So I would say like Tucker Carlson, when he talks about the Great Replacement over and over and over and over again, and then when some kid picks up a gun and he starts killing black people or like immigrants or whatever, it's pretty obvious that like even if I can't draw a straight line from A to B, I can see how somebody could get from A to B.
Well, yeah. Especially if it's in his fucking manifesto.
When they give irresponsible rhetoric that leads to things like shootings or things like the January 6th attempted coup insurrection, I want to be able to say when you engage in this type of rhetoric or language is dangerous, it will cause people to do this. So I think for Kenosha, I wouldn't say that like an amalgamation of things led to those riots. I would say pretty clearly it was absolutely the coverage of the Jacob Blake shooting. Jacob Blake was shot on August 23rd. There were riots that day and on the 24th, and on the 25th was the Rittenhouse shooting. That timeline of like 3 days is not an accident. It was very clearly, the video went out of Jacob Blake being shot. Every left-leaning media person in the world jumped on it, started blasting it all over Twitter, all over social media, all over mainstream media.
Yeah, so are we supposed to not? Are we supposed to bury our heads in the sand, especially when police brutality was the hot topic at the moment? I mean, come on, dude. That's fucking disingenuous to say that. Like, the left somehow caused these guys to be shot. Like, that's even more fucked up. Like,
media as like a poor innocent black guy that got shot in the back by cops 6 times. A lot of people still think he was killed even. I think that the misreporting and the mishandling of that was absolutely the biggest drive of those Kenosha riots that happened in the following days.
No, because that's also ignoring what happened, 2 years ahead of that.
I mean,
no.
You may have a point. I don't know, to be honest with you. I mean, I wouldn't know how to parse that out. And you can say that the coverage was poor, and that, in my mind, has really is in no way a mitigating factor in my mind for the actions that Rittenhouse took. So it's sort of irrelevant relative to my perception of Rittenhouse. I mean, I take it as a granted that at any given time, news is sensationalistic, and the way that our media is organized now, it's sensationalistic, depending on who they perceive their audience to be, and et cetera.
Yeah, but if you're applying that only to social media, dude, they were doing that with the Iraq War, like,
et cetera. I mean, there were protests, peaceful protests in that first day. At night, things turned ugly, and maybe it is the media's fault, or certain media outlets and not others. I mean,
well, you're also ignoring the blatant, just bad actors that come with any protest, because during any protest, there's specifically there are actual and I don't want to call them gangs, but they a lot of criminal gangs do actually think about this, and they think this way, where they're like, oh, you see, such and such is they'll kind of go through certain social media and they'll be like, hey, you see that they have a protest here. If it's in a really urban area, then they're going to they do this shit. It's been proven where they kind of plan to sow, a bunch of divide, and then they ignite it. Then you get, the one guy that smashes, I know how it happened in Minnesota, where I'm not sure if it was proven to be a right-wing provocateur, but it's kind of the same idea, where it's not really the protesters or the people who are, trying to get their message across that are doing these actions. It's a lot of opportunistic criminals using it as a front to then conduct whatever they were planning on doing anyway. So,
but I think the impetus to protest, it's pretty hard to say that when you're talking about a preceding whatever 12 18 months you want to say, where you've had some of the biggest protests about police shootings that the country has seen, to say that that's completely divorced from that context, I mean, I think there's a very hard argument to make. But like I say, relative to Rittenhouse, none of that is relevant to me.
Okay, sure. Yeah, that's fine. And I would agree that other things are playing into it as well. I'm not going to argue against police, even the facts of the matter relating to police bias. There's a huge, over 100 million traffic stops. The Veil of Darkness study that I think was published in Nature Human Behavior or whatever. I mean, so what you were talking about with your friend being pulled over in the Range Rover, I mean, these are pretty unarguable. So I wouldn't disagree with that. But the Kenosha stuff being spurred on by what I would consider to be essentially fake news was, I thought, a little bit troubling. But for point two,
it's not fake news when they're it's misreporting. But fake news?
I hear this a lot. It's repeated a lot. I've heard it on your show quite a few times. This idea that Rittenhouse drove over.
And also, I think that he's putting an overemphasis on the over-reporting that was happening at that point. But again,
state lines, or he drove to a neighboring city.
He did.
His dad lived in that city. He worked there as a lifeguard. It was a 20-minute drive. I don't think I think he had just as much right.
No, but his mom was the one who had the gun. This is just blatantly ignoring fucking gun laws and the fact that he was 17 years old. This is insane. Especially in Illinois, the fact that he didn't have a FOID card, had that gun, and then he can cross over into state lines and that's fine. But okay, do you understand how the laws work with specifically crossing state lines with marijuana, for instance? This is a big one where for some reason, there are dispensaries literally on the Wisconsin border, and they will prosecute these so much harder than what happened with Kyle Rittenhouse. Do we see a problem there? Or are you just going to go no, his dad lived there and he took his dad's gun, when that's not what happened?
To be in that community as literally any other protester there. I don't think that's enough.
I don't know, man. This is really weird. He's not just playing devil's advocate. It's he's actively rooting for Kyle Rittenhouse in this moment.
I'll say that, in my estimation, is that it's one thing I own a bodega, or my dad owns a bodega, let's say. Mm-hmm. And I go down there and I sit in the bodega, and maybe with a weapon, maybe not, and to protect that. And I think, look, we can't know what is in Kyle Rittenhouse's, mind or heart in that moment. Maybe he felt such a close connection to that community that that's what spurred him on to grab a gun and go down there and patrol, or not. I mean, I don't know. You don't know. We can't know that.
We actually do know that because of his communications that came out in the in the court documents. And yes, he was like, he had even kind of said, I want to go kill me a protester type of shit.
It is material insofar as, crossing state lines makes it seem like it's further away. I don't know if I ever said crossing state lines. I think in the video.
Antioch is okay. So this is arguing semantics, because Antioch is like pretty much on the border of Wisconsin, right by Kenosha. Like no, he crossed the state line, period. Don't care if it was literally a mile. He crossed the state line with a weapon that was not registered to him. Okay?
Video that you took.
Can we at least agree to that?
You saw a video of mine on Twitter and or through Twitter, and you reached out to me. That's conceivable. But, I had very little coverage of the Rittenhouse case itself. In fact, none of the actual case.
Sure.
I think I did a video following the verdict, but it has been not so much a policy, you could say, but just like I don't watch legal cases. I just find that not to be helpful. I didn't watch the O.J. Simpson trial. I wasn't in this business. I didn't watch the Johnny Depp and his girlfriend trial. I just don't watch trials. And I didn't watch the Zimmerman
Wait a
trial.
minute.
I don't follow them. I don't
Oh my God, it's been over 2 years since that happened. Ugh.
cover them in general. Because I think
melting
that's
into my head now.
Spectacle, I think. Yeah, I remember you mentioning this. Like, it seems a little bit dramatic, and I would agree that people definitely. I mean, we've seen that with the Amber Heard Johnny Depp stuff. That it's a sensational thing. I think there was more interest in Amber Heard Johnny Depp than Ukraine.
There's lessons to be learned in these things, but I'm more interested in, if I'm going to follow any type of trials, I'm more interested in like tort cases against corporations than I am in trying to put myself in the form of the jury.
Sammy, he loves himself some torts.
Sure.
So the fact is, it was a neighboring town. It was a different state. I mean, people are saying it to make the point that what is his investment in this? I also think that it's a point, but it's a minor one. I don't think it's a huge point. I don't think that I ever made a big deal of it. And to be honest with you, I don't watch much other coverage of anything. To the extent that I've even seen stuff that you've done, it's really only stuff that people send me.
Yeah, sure.
And so it's possible that people overplayed that in a way that was. I don't know. I guess in your mind prejudicial towards him, but that's not. I mean, I'm agnostic as to.
It's kind of doing the thing that he was talking about at the beginning of this debate, where it's like, I'm just kind of pontificating on this and maybe creating a false narrative.
That I mean, it's certainly accurate to say. But if you think it gives the wrong impression of what he was doing there, okay.
I mean, and I agree with everything you're saying now, but I mean, the idea that if you haven't followed much, you don't know much about it, I think it's perfectly fine. I do that with a lot of stuff. But to say that and then simultaneously give really strong opinions about, I think, the facts of the matter, I think.
Well, on that video, you tell me what I got wrong in that video. I said he killed 2 people, and he shot a 3rd in the arm. And he went down there, according to him, to protect a car.
So I think
dealership.
So this is
that his buddy's friend was asking him to protect.
Well, so to be clear, a couple things. On the last part, the reason why people were down there was because on the 24th, the Kenosha Guard formed on Facebook in response to a car dealership, over 100 cars and neighboring buildings being set on fire on a block. Right. That's why that little militia thing.
Yeah. This is going to be a hot take, and I'll just say it. But yeah, insurance took care of that, dude. This is one of those things that I actually get a little pissed off about, because I don't know Destiny's politics on the death penalty, but I'm assuming that he's totally for capital punishment, that he's 100% he thinks that this was justified because protecting property can't it's totally justified to take a life to protect property, right? Not yourself, property. So. Man, how the fuck did he pass as a leftist for so long?
Can I he heard about it from what Facebook, the fuck? A friend that heard about it on Facebook. There was a reason why that had formed. It wasn't just randomly I'm gonna go down to a place. Number one. For the second thing, I think that when I look at people's characterizations of events, I think we can be a little bit more sophisticated than are the facts 100% correct or incorrect. I think it goes a little bit deeper than that. I'm sure you've heard people say 1350 over and over again, right?
I don't know what 1350 is. Let's just stick with what I said.
Sure.
That you have a problem with, because I said he went down there to protect property.
Well, so here are things.
Found out through Facebook that there was a car dealership, or according to the GQ story on him, which I think is the deepest reporting I've seen, it was from his friend. Sure. Regardless.
Yeah. Well, so things that you've said that are kind of true, but a little bit so he killed 2 people with a gun because he killed people and went to a neighboring town to kill people. The characterization is kind of strange that he was driving to a neighboring town. It's pretty common that people's communities, especially in rural areas, are in.
Dude, no, stop it. you're being too again, he's doing this thing where he's way too charitable to the Rittenhouse situation by he's rewriting what actually happened and what Rittenhouse's intent was. Wow. Like, is this what he does where he just advocates like he is the person?
In other areas.
From a different town, in a different state, he went down to protect either because he saw it on Facebook or because his friend said to protect a car dealership. That's what I said. And then he killed people, which he did.
True. Then also, the second thing is the idea that he's killing people to defend property. That isn't true either. He didn't kill anybody in defense of property.
Why did he show up there with a gun?
Ostensibly, as you said, to protect property.
Okay. What do you do with a gun to protect property?
You would shoot people.
Okay.
But he didn't shoot people protecting property. If I take a gun with me to a bar and I go to drink and somebody tries to assault me,
But if you go to a bar to protect the bar from people coming in, and you know there's people coming in, and you fire at them, I mean, that's what you're doing.
I agree if that was the case, but Rittenhouse wasn't shooting at people defending property. He shot at people that shot at him first and attacked him.
He's patrolling around with a gun.
Yeah, but that's you have a Second Amendment right in the United States to have a firearm. And that's
he wasn't shot at. That's also like, dude, no. I'm not gonna let him skate on that one, dude. He was getting attacked by he was being physically attacked. Yes, he does have the right to protect himself in that situation specifically. But I understand exactly what Sam is saying. Like, going just to the base point that he shouldn't have even been there.
But we're not talking about whether he had a right to do it.
Well, we are,
he was
right?
exonerated from the question of murder.
He actually didn't. The thing is, he didn't have the right to be there with that gun. He was not 18 years of age, which that's the federal regulation on owning a firearm. So last time I fucking checked, that's a fucking crime still.
It's not a question whether he had a right to do it. I'm saying he's an asshole for doing it.
Why is he more of an asshole than any protester was there past curfew?
You go down there with a gun. Well, he might be, but he shot. Not only did he shoot people, not only make the decision, I'm going to go down there with a gun to protect property. And if I'm going down there with a gun, that means that if push comes to shove, I'm going to shoot people. And so whether he thought, oh, I may end up having to shoot somebody because people will see the gun and come at me because I've got a gun and they want to disarm me or they want to come. He's going into this situation with a gun, not for the express purpose of anything other than to protect property.
Sure.
Right? I mean, he's not going there to protest these things. And I'm not saying that. I'm not defending people who are, committing violence or any type of property destruction, or I'm not defending anybody in this scenario.
Yeah. Could he not have just brought the gun to protect himself if he thought somebody was going to attack him, given that his...
Why? You know how you can protect yourself? Don't go there.
Yeah, don't go.
That's a danger to...
Don't go, and also, no, he didn't have the right to have that gun. I will keep reiterating that he was 17 years old in a state that that the gun was not registered in.
Don't go there.
So digging in on the other side now,
and if this wasn't such a fucking media pariah, he would have been charged with more. You know this.
This is what sounds like the liberal response. Like, who cares if your community is on fire? Who cares if all of your stuff is being burned down? Who cares if people from outside the community are coming into protest, which is what was happening as well. The police, when they released the arrest, a lot of people weren't even from there. Just stay home and let everything happen. Like, that's not going to happen, right? Especially in rural areas. You know that people are going to show up. Like, or would you say the same?
And also saying that Kenosha is rural, dude. Like, it's not as rural as you're making it out to be. It's actually one of the bigger townships in Wisconsin.
About like Koreans during the LA riots, like that, like they should have just stayed home. They should have let their stuff burn down. None of their friends should have showed up. Like, I think we would.
I think, listen, like I said, I think it's perfectly legitimate. You go into your store and you sit there as a way of protecting it. Okay, but that's not what he did. He was roaming the streets as if he was some type of guardian angel or something.
Yeah, like he was RoboCop.
I had problems even with guardian angels in New York to some extent, but at least they weren't out there with a weapon that is used explicitly to kill people. I mean, and then on top of which, the video that you saw was not rehashing any of this. It was talking about his appearance in right-wing media, because not only did this guy, which I just, like I say, perfectly within his right to decide he's going to go down and protect the city because of all the training he had or didn't have in protecting the city with, weapons like that, which I think.
That's kind of the funny part, too, is that that we learned that he didn't get into the military because he was a poor marksman.
I think it's just an incredibly irresponsible thing to do. But then.
He was also, I think they said that he was unstable. So there's also that.
The guy is using it to make himself
you know what?
famous.
I'm sorry. I actually got to correct that. I think that I might be mixing up my gunman because I think that was the one that tried to Yeah, go after Trump.
Like, I can conceive of a situation where a
both of them.
17 or 18-year-old kid, whatever his age was specifically at that time, and making this huge mistake of judgment. Like, I'm going to go down there with a weapon. I am not in any way trained to deal with this situation, to do crowd control or whatever it is. But I'm super psyched to do this. And I can conceive of a kid going down there, killing two people, if you want to say in a completely innocent way, and maiming a third in a completely innocent way. And then after that happens and he gets, exonerated on murder charges, I can see, if this guy then decides, like, I'm going to take some time away and do some introspection, and I'm going to, because, you see this all the time. I mean, you can find YouTube videos of people who have killed people either, accidentally. I drunk drove and I hit somebody, or it was dark and I hit somebody and they died, or I punched somebody one time, knocked them out and they were dead. And you see them, like, deal with the fact that they had taken two lives or a life. And, then I would think, people make mistakes, but the guy's just an asshole. And that's really all I said. I don't think I even said he was an asshole, but the implication was he's an asshole, and he's using the fact that he killed two people as a sort of mechanism in which to get fame. I think that is, I mean, we talk about, what's problematic in our society.
So, him trying...
Sorry, my fan died.
Yeah, him trying to get fame, I think, is the natural consequence of how people on the left treat him. If one side is going to cast you as a villain, you can't be surprised when they run to the other side to be cast as a hero. Otherwise, you're just going to sit there and have your life destroyed and then what, get nothing out of it? I'm not saying his action and right-wing media is good.
That's bullshit, because they fucking they casted him as a hero before any of that went down. Like, dude, they were waiting for somebody like Kyle Rittenhouse, and that's fucked up to, like, pretend that wasn't the case.
But given how many people say he killed black people, he was a white nationalist. The guy that called into your show said that he was I think he compared him to Hitler Youth policing civil rights marches. And I think you said that was a valid point. When he's being cast in that light over and over and over again, I don't think it's very surprising that he's going to run into the arms of people on the right that are going to embrace him as a hero, especially given how much is factually incorrect about what's being stated about him. How many times people say that he killed people in defense of property, which wasn't true. How many times people are willing to downplay the other protesters. You keep mentioning the third guy that was maimed. That guy got maimed running up to Rittenhouse with a Glock that he was going to shoot him with. And I think that the overall issue you have here is this constant downplaying of what was going on in Kenosha, which was a community that has, I think, as high as $50 million of property damage on a small community, $2 million of city property destroyed. There were like over 34. Why are you bringing
up property if he didn't kill those people in the service of protecting property?
What I'm saying is it's a kid that went down because he probably felt a calling to protect his community. And I think given the totality of the action that you saw,
it's not his community. Sorry, dude.
Let me finish real quick. You just want to, okay,
It's his divorced dad's community.
The videos of him running around doing the medico, whatever. And we can say he's a dumb kid, he's doing dumb shit, sure. But there was not a single piece of footage anywhere that was released of showing him acting in an aggressive manner towards any person ever. That never got released, ever. And instead, all we have are videos of him moving when being asked, offering water bottles and bandages or whatever to people that are saying things. There's videos that were released weeks before of him cleaning graffiti off his property, I think trying to join some youth police or whatever bullshit. It seems to me, based on everything I've seen, probably just a kid that was concerned about his community. Given that his dad lived there and he was a lifeguard there for some years, that's not the most inconceivable thing ever. So given that, hold on real quick. Given that his community was literally being destroyed, given that all the videos show him showing up to clean up graffiti, offer water bottles or whatever, showing that all of the provocation that was on video was other people attacking him, and that's what happened over and over and over again. The first shooting only happened after a guy behind the first victim got shot into the air behind him. I don't think it's fair to say that like Rittenhouse went there with the goal of being like this bloodthirsty murderer.
Wait. Was it a warning shot though? Did he actually give him a warning shot, and then because of a warning shot, he shot first?
Somebody who was going to start.
I didn't say that.
No, you didn't. But this constant like phrasing of what he's doing, and then like a quote that you use. Wait, real quick, because you did a whole rebel. You said like 20 things that I disagree with. Just real quick, like you use this phrase. I was concerned someone might go in and steal Skittles. Like that was a phrase that you used as well when talking about the destruction that was being wrought on this community. And I think that was my final point. That if you were to, I hate to pull the conservative one here, if you were to reverse the races here, I think that all of the coverage on the left would have been far different. If it was a black person that shot 3 white people that were marching through an all black community, setting fire to it, I think everybody would have been on their high horses defending his right to be in that community and defend their property from like white supremacists going through and marching through and burning stuff down.
Okay, so you have a problem with me saying Skittles because that's, I guess, hyperbole.
No, it's not. It's the downplaying constantly of like the damage writing was caused and making him seem like a Hitler guy. Yeah.
First off, when that guy IM'd me in that video, it was in response to this guy's conservative media tour. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, like, I am not responsible for the nameless people that you're telling me have spread misinformation. Like I said, I don't watch other shows. I'm responsible for what I did. Now, you, in response, and again, I only know this because somebody just sent this to me a day ago. You said that I would be guzzling buckets of his cum if he was black and they were white.
Yeah, true.
Okay, so now, aside from the issue of whether I would guzzle buckets of cum in any scenario,
dude, his chat is just all bots. I'm calling this bullshit out. Like, there's no fucking way.
You're creating a straw man. I don't know. Listen, because first off, I've been doing this for 18 years, and if there has never been a situation where this has taken place, the reverse scenario you're talking about, that may be instructive. But you would never find me ever celebrating, and particularly a guy who's celebrating the killing of anybody, ever.
No, Sam's consistent.
It's not about celebrating the killing.
Wait a second. Excuse me. You said I would be guzzling.
No. Even if you were trying to be funny, dude. No, he's using what you said like almost in direct context. So no.
Buckets of his cum. That I'm assuming is your way of saying I'd be celebrating that person.
Yeah.
Not celebrating, but I think
I'm so excited that I would be guzzling buckets of their cum.
I think that
I would let them jack off in my mouth because I'm so excited about what they did. And I'm telling you, I've never done that. I've never celebrated anybody killing anybody in any scenario whatsoever. I've been doing this for 18 years, 3 hours a day. If it was out there, you'd know it. So you're the one who's actually doing what you accused me of doing. I didn't do it.
That's
you and I
projection,
have
baby.
as to why this guy went there. Okay. You never know. This is a guy who's
salty destiny. Oh man, I needed this in my life a lot sooner.
Fan of John Doyle, who is also like a white nationalist. We know this, but I still do not have any out there claiming I have some knowledge about his intent. I said he went down there to protect property, which is what he claimed he did. That is very generous. I'm being perfectly, I'm letting him set the terms. He went down there with a gun and people got shot. I think it's a bad example for society. I think it sets a bad precedent. I'm surprised there isn't any type of civil action you can take on a wrongful death. I think it's vigilantism, regardless of who performs it, is wrong. Yeah. And then I think using that to build your fame, it's fucking gross.
Yeah, the fact that they can't file a civil case just in the merit, like arguing the merit that he shouldn't have been there, number one, and also arguing that he had an illegal weapon. Like,
it's an asshole. And so
I know he was charged with part of that, but...
And you've gone on to say like that a hypothetical situation where I'd be so excited, I'd be jizzling, sucking people's cum because of it. And it's like you're doing exactly. Wait, straw man me.
Sure. Okay, give me a second then. Okay, so I'm not straw manning it. So these are quotes that I've written down from your video. So one was, you said he killed 2 people with a gun because he killed people in a neighboring town, which is technically true in the same way that white people are becoming a minority in the United States. But I wouldn't let a conservative get away with that latter statement because it's obvious what they're implying, same as the former of what you're implying. You're implying that he's like traveling to some community that has no ties to. And you said as much in this conversation that you're like, well, I don't know why he would go down there, right? Not everybody lives in New York City. Like a 20-mile away town might be a place that you have close ties to.
Don't do that to me. I grew up in Worcester, Massachusetts. I've spent 15 years living in a rural area where my neighbors are cows.
Then how is it so inconceivable that a town like then how is it so inconceivable?
I know the majority of people I know own guns.
Yeah.
Sure, but then I don't understand how it's so inconceivable that somebody might have like a town that they closely identify with like 15, 20 miles away. I'm from Nebraska, like that's not uncommon, depending on how far east or west you live. Like, yeah, everybody goes to Omaha, everybody goes to...
Go down and patrol without any training, to go down there and patrol and do crowd control with a weapon.
If your community is burning and the police can't do anything, do you really think that that's that unbelievable of a response?
That you would that I would go down there with a gun?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for all of those people, that you would just say like, let it burn.
No, I'm not saying let it burn.
No, hold on. You have to do one or the other. You can't. There is no fence sitting on this one. Yeah.
If he ran up to me and said the town is burning, should I go down there with my weapon? I would say no, man, don't.
Okay. And then you would be willing to condemn any other community that wanted to protect their community if they thought it was being burned down? If white nationalists rolled into some all-black community with the intent, with the Tulsa race riots, whatever, they wanted to roll down and burn everything down, you say like, well, you guys should just leave. You don't have any right to protect your community. Just go.
No, we wouldn't leave. Remember now, he's still traveling there. So, I'm not saying don't leave. I'm saying if somebody comes up to me, I don't care what race they are, and they say like, downtown is burning, I'm going to go down there with my gun and protect it. And I would be like, dude, you don't have any business doing that. You're just going to get yourself or somebody else killed. That's what I would say.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, I guess that is...
We have a disagreement about whether or not we want to promote vigilantism with guns. for people who are untrained in that situation. We have a disagreement. We have to agree.
It's not a matter of promotion. I think it's a matter of realizing that, like, if there are going to be community.
It's binary.
What?
So you're either saying don't do it or you're saying do it. That's what you just told me.
I've always said.
No, because also you could start arguing like retaliatory killings being okay at that point. Like you really can. Like such and such killed my daughter. Then it's okay for me just by, you know, that thought process, I almost said it right the first time, to actually go and kill that person, which again, how much John Wickism are you actually okay with in society? I mean, is it okay for us all to go full Punisher mode, or what's your line?
Always said don't do it. Even in the Rittenhouse case, I think going there was stupid. I've always said the same. But
you and I are in agreement.
No, we're not in agreement, because something being stupid isn't the same as something being morally wrong. I think anytime you're willing to like risk dying for a business or somebody else's business, probably not like the best decision.
I don't think he was arguing it was morally wrong, was he?
Burned to the ground.
I'm not condemning anybody.
You're calling him a killer like 50 times. Of course you're condemning him.
Because he is. He killed 2 people.
Why did I do that video?
Because you were trying to show how pathetic it was, that he was upset that his life was being ruined, because you're saying, well, it's because you killed people.
Because he was ginning up publicity for himself on right-wing shows like Charlie Kirk and Tucker Carlson and whoever else he can find to have him on. And he is making a celebrity out of himself because he killed 2 people.
He's already a celebrity, though. What's he supposed to do? What was he going to do after that trial? You know that his life is forever altered. It's not like he can just step back into like the shadows and be a normal citizen. Like that dude's life is going to be changed completely for the rest of.
That mistake that you and I agree that he made, he is paying for.
No, hold on. That wasn't his mistake. There was only maybe he shouldn't. To even say that was a mistake. Hold on. I think it was dumb, but the reality is he had a right to be in that community. He had a right to show up with a firearm to protect himself if he wanted to, and he didn't kill anybody in defense of property. He killed people that attacked him aggressively without provocation first in every single instance, one of which was a person with a firearm.
When you say that, it makes it sound like he was helicoptered in and just dropped in that moment where people are attacking him. He's going around with a gun. He's there because he's protecting property. But look, you can frame it in the way that you want to frame it. I'll frame it in the way that I want to frame it. You agree that nothing I'm saying is not factually correct, which is what you start out by saying it's factually correct. It's not just that it's...
Honestly, that kind of makes me wonder, because does that give the other guy who had the gun the right to shoot Kyle Rittenhouse in that moment because he saw Kyle Rittenhouse's gun?
Horse paste. I'm saying it's horse paste, and it's also in different doses for other diseases. Ivermectin is used, and you don't like the fact that I'm saying it technically, because my emphasis is this guy made a shitty mistake that ended up in costing 2 people their lives, and he now is going out and monetizing it. It's fucking gross, and you and I can disagree on that, but nothing I'm saying is factually incorrect whatsoever.
It's not just.
Stephen.
It's not just. Hold on, Sam. This is such a.
You pretended. You came up with a hypothetical, accusing me if it was a different race that I would be so ecstatic about it, I would be guzzling their buckets of cum.
If I said that George Floyd died after being arrested for trying to buy something with counterfeit money with fentanyl in his system, do you think that that's okay to say, even though factually everything I just said was correct? Or would you say, well, hold on, the framing here is a little bit dishonest? Because if you say that, you know what, that's fine, it's all factually correct, then I guess we agree on everything. That's fine. You can just say whatever you want, I guess. As long as you're picking the right facts and they don't happen to be incorrect.
That George Floyd had fentanyl in his system?
Yeah.
And that's why he died?
He died with fentanyl in his system. Could have been an OD, maybe. Don't know 100%.
I mean, I think we know the coroner's report.
Oh God, did Destiny play that game with the COVID deaths? And was it just like, oh yeah, they're just reporting every death and if they just happen to have COVID? Oh God.
We don't know 100% how much fentanyl contributed to him dying. We know that he got arrested there.
I'm starting to get reminded of why I really have never gotten into this guy. He's such a fucking prick sometimes.
I think he was trying to buy some with counterfeit money.
We know what the but for was, right? The but for was the knee on his neck. But yes, he did have fentanyl in his system. I don't think that's a reason to die, to be killed.
But sure, I'm not saying it's a reason to be killed. But if I were to only report on those types of facts, which a lot of conservatives did, even though it's all factually correct, I still think you'd have an issue with the framing. Much the same that I have an issue with your framing when you're saying he went to go and protect stores because somebody might steal some Skittles, and he killed 2 people with his gun to protect some stores. It weren't just Skittles that were on fire that night, and he didn't kill people protecting stores. He killed people that tried to kill him.
I mean, the minutia in which you're taking issue with, like my issue with someone saying that George Floyd, had fentanyl in his blood, to the extent that I take issue with that, has to do with their intent. And their intent in that is to underplay the idea of police brutality and the way that black people are policed in this country. Your issue with my intent is that I'm not giving a fair enough shake to a guy who killed 2 people in self-defense because he was in a place, because he made an incredibly stupid decision, because he wanted to protect property, and he's going out and monetizing it. I am perfectly willing to accept that I am framing it in a way that makes that point that he is an asshole for going out and monetizing it, and that I'm framing it in that way to make that clear to people, because I want to discourage anybody, regardless of what their race is or what their...
Does Destiny have the ability to give his full attention to any discussion? Like, dude, I get ADHD. Like, yeah, I got a little bit myself, but...
ideology is picking up a weapon and deciding they're going to play, sheriff or whatever it is, protector of the car lot.
Sure. And I guess my issue is I feel like do you agree that the riots were like destroying Kenosha? Because I would say that you were downplaying that when you say things like somebody might show up and steal some Skittles.
Do I agree that the riots were destroying Kenosha? I don't. I mean, they were definitely causing damage.
Yeah, it caused damage, but it didn't destroy Kenosha. I mean, for somebody that's probably never been to Kenosha, I'm looking at you, and I'll be fair, Sam, too. I've been to Kenosha many, many times, and I can tell you right, especially post Rittenhouse. Guess what? It's still there.
But I will stipulate, for the sake of this argument, they were destroying Kenosha.
Okay. Do you agree that like every other protester that was there had just as much a right to be there as Rittenhouse himself?
I think everybody who's there has a right to be there. I think if you bring a gun to a protest, you're an asshole.
Okay, so the third guy that got shot, maimed.
He was an asshole too, yeah.
That guy's an asshole too, right?
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you know what? You don't deserve to be shot because you're an asshole. I wasn't saying.
Hold on. He didn't get shot because he was an asshole. He was shot because he ran up to Rittenhouse and he ran for fire.
I'm saying being an asshole is no mitigation in terms of how wrong it is to be shot. And so I don't think Rittenhouse should have been shot either.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I guess.
I mean, I told you this would be a short conversation because we just have a fundamental disagreement as to whether his actions were appropriate. And I would say that you're still on this thing, and I'm reacting to the fact that he's out there monetizing it, and I can't imagine for a moment that you could justify him going out and monetizing it.
Well, it's not so much justifying as it's just this thing will happen over and over again, where one side of the media, the right or the left, will massively come out and just totally shit on some dude, and then 2 weeks later they're like, "Oh my god, I can't believe he ran to the other side." Like the Rittenhouse stuff on day one,
nobody was surprised by that. Come on, what?
Well, if you're so adept at rural areas, you tell me what side he was on.
Well, he just seemed like a kid that liked his community. He seemed like a normal dude. That's what he looked like. Every video.
No.
You tell me. You know so much about rural areas. You tell me what side this kid who's 17, who's got this weapon, what side is he on?
I don't think being 17 with an AR. Hold on. Wait. What do you mean? What side? He's an American citizen that has a gun that lives in a rural area. Yeah, he's probably conservative. But he's not a white nationalist. Illegal
gun. There is still illegal guns. See, this weird thing that you guys forgot about, the whole, you got to be 16 to drive kind of thing. I know it's different in some states, and I do know that gun ages do vary from state to state, obviously. But I am an expert in Illinois gun laws, and guess what? That's where he was from. That's where his gun was registered. So fuck off with that.
Like a crazy, bloodthirsty, anti-civil rights, murdering, crazy dude. He's just a kid with a...
John Doyle. What do you think about that? I don't know that much about John Doyle, but everything I've read isn't terribly good. What do you think about that?
I don't know. When you say...
Actually, specifically in AR, you have to be 21 in order to even get that in Illinois.
John Doyle, because the media was mean to him? Why didn't he like somebody else?
I don't know.
John Doyle is virulent.
This sounds like when my mom says that, Obama is a terrorist because he was friends with Bill Ayers when he was younger, and Bill Ayers is part of the Weather Underground. I don't know what a 17-year-old interest is in John Doyle. I do know that people went through all of his social media and every account he's ever posted on, didn't find anything racist, didn't find anything horrible, didn't find any anti-BLM. I'm pretty sure they found pro-BLM stuff on his shit. Maybe he's really good at hiding it. He just knew he was going to blow up into international coverage, so he managed to scrub all of it. But what is this John Doyle thing? What is the tie to Rittenhouse and John Doyle? Can you tell me? How are you so convinced that he's so bought into, whatever white nationalists or crazy stuff that John Doyle guy is presenting?
You hear this audio?
No, I don't. What is the audio? And also, wait, is this pre or post shooting?
This is him on some Blaze show saying how much he loves John Doyle, and then John Doyle coming out and giving him a hug.
Okay, so this is post shooting. Post shooting, right. It wouldn't surprise me if this guy became friends with every right-leaning person.
Honestly, no. You're not being as charitable there. No.
In the world because of the reason that I literally just gave. If you're going to be cast as a villain on one side, of course
John
you're going to
look to... not just right-leaning. I mean, this guy, Guard and protect your local church. Guard and protect your local pregnancy. Call them in advance. Bring rifles and men with you, or we can just keep talking, whichever you'd like. That's a quote from John Doyle.
Wait, what was necessarily wrong with that quote?
He's threatening pregnancy centers with guns.
Oh, wait, what was it? I heard churches in the beginning. Can you read that quote to me again? Wait, hold on. And wait, is this a quote just recently over the Roe v. Wade thing? When did Rittenhouse talk to him?
Yeah, this is, well, I don't know.
Well, I mean, isn't that kind of important? Because if you're showing me John Doyle quotes from a few weeks ago relating to Roe v. Wade and Rittenhouse,
John Doyle been making quotes like this. I think. I mean, fine. People can go search. Maybe John Doyle is not a self-described.
Sure, he might be a Christian fascist nationalist. He might be. I've heard that before. I don't know. I'm just saying that it wouldn't.
No more than I do about it.
Sure. I'm just saying it wouldn't surprise me that with the massive condemnation and villainization of the left, that Rittenhouse is probably going to look to whoever's going to step on the right and then connect with whatever media entities or people are going to be connected via that. That's not surprising. But I don't think that you can blame.
Well, he was also to ignore that he was predisposed, and he was more than likely a Trump supporter. And also, I mean, we can look at his mom's social media. We can look at his dad's social media. And then if you're going to play this game where you're just going to be able to come to conclusions based on anecdotal evidence, then we can play the same thing, except we're using actual evidence of the parentage that would lead to such a conclusion.
Blame him for that if we're constantly casting him as a villain. That's just going to be he's 17, 18 years old.
Again.
You're being way too charitable with that too, where it's just like, just because he's 17, you're just like, oh, well, he's 17 years old. His life is ruined. And now this is his only way. His only shot is to make it as a successful adult is by monetizing his experience of shooting two people in a place he shouldn't have been.
Kyle Rittenhouse is the only time after the verdict, I think I did a video saying this is a damn shame, because we want to discourage people from picking up guns and going down and,
honestly, this is also something I just got to say, and I hate this with streamers. If you're going to have a debate like this, specifically like between just you and Sam Seder, hide your fucking chat, dude.
Meeting protests with guns. I'm against that. I am blanket against
Sure.
that. And then the next time I talk about Kyle Rittenhouse is just because he's doing this tour. So it's not my fault. Now, listen, Christy Todd Whitman once told me that the reason why the conservatives don't buy into climate change is because the liberals are so uptight about it. I mean, if this guy is going to go and go out and monetize and become a celebrity because of this stuff, I'm sorry. I think he's an asshole. There's really not much else to talk about. I mean, there isn't.
Okay.
But while we're here, because some other people sent me some stuff.
Go for it. Yeah.
Citizens United, you have done. I saw one a long time ago that somebody sent me, and I didn't mention your name on the show because you said I knew nothing about the case.
Yeah.
And I have.
Man, I love the fact that Sam is just bringing this stuff to Destiny, and Destiny is like, oh, crap, I did say some things about Sam. Uh-oh.
Over the years,
this isn't going to make me look good.
Literally dozens of interviews about Citizens United with constitutional law professors, with statutory law professors, with Feingold himself, whose law was overturned by Citizens United. And your characterization of the case is just bizarre to me. Somebody sent me a second one this week that you did. And based upon the way you responded to my video about Kyle Rittenhouse, where I had nothing factually wrong, you didn't like the framing, but your framing was assuming that if this happened to different races, that I'd be guzzling buckets of his cum. So you were really basically doing what you accused me of doing.
What do you think I'm incorrect about, factually incorrect about relating to the Citizens United case?
Well, you seem to think the case was just about what Citizens United did.
Well, I mean, the ruling is a broad ruling, but the facts of the case, the facts of the case.
Yeah, the facts of the case are the facts of the case, but you can have a narrow ruling or you can have a ruling that answers a question that was not even asked by the plaintiff. And that's why Citizens United is such a bad situation. I don't care if the facts of the case where the Supreme Court found that, okay, Citizens United had spent enough time, producing documentaries to qualify as an actual, film company and therefore could put that advertisement on. That would have been whatever. Who cares? But they went ahead and completely superseded and addressed a question that they were never even asked by the plaintiff. So the court went way beyond where they needed to resolve that question, and you didn't seem to understand that.
I mean, obviously, when you're getting things like super PACs coming downstream from the Citizens United case, the ruling was broad enough to affect more than just the overture of that bipartisan.
So what is it that you felt that I got wrong when you were saying he's an idiot, he doesn't understand this case?
My issue is that it felt like you had really strong opinions on the case, and then the person on the phone gave you an example that was literally just walking you through like almost exactly the facts of the case, and it seemed like neither you nor your co-host could see that he was clearly walking you to the end of that. And then when you agreed that like, oh yeah, well in that case, that company should be able to advertise for a documentary, and then he's like, well, what's your problem with Citizens United? Both of you like lost your mind. You're like, well, hold on, wait a second, it's totally different. It's like,
well, yes,
do you not
because
see that
Citizens United, to say that Citizens United, the case that was decided by the Supreme Court is about that factual situation is absolutely absurd. They addressed the question that was not asked by the plaintiff as to whether there should be any restrictions on corporate electioneering in the run-up to an election, and that was not even a question that was addressed.
Sure, but I mean, like,
you can look at what Stevens wrote in the dissent.
Sure, yes, I understand, but I mean, like, it felt to me, I guess I can never really prove it, that watching the caller walk you through the facts of the case, and then it seemed like neither of you were familiar with it. I'm not saying that I'm pro Citizens United or that I think that it was a good decision. I just think it feels like a really complicated question, and I feel like whenever people bring it up, then it's very easy. Like, oh, Citizens United is when the Supreme what?
What's the complicated part of that question?
Is what is a violation of the First Amendment right to advertise for stuff that might or might not be related to political campaigns in the run-up to elections? Yeah. I think that's a really complicated question.
No, they went far beyond that. It wasn't a question of advertising. The question of advertising was a very narrow question as to whether Citizens United, the organization, qualified as a media company. They tried in 2004. To sue to seek an injunction against Michael Moore's movie. I can't remember what the name of it was. Mm-hmm. I think it was like Fahrenheit 451. Okay. I think it was that. It may have been one of his others, but it was an anti-Bush film. And he was advertising it within the run-up to the election, and they tried to get the FEC to stop it. And the FEC said, no, it's okay, because he's actually a filmmaker. So Citizens United tried to do the same thing, and the FEC said, no, you're not actually, or the three-panel court, or however they adjudicate these things, mm-hmm. You're not an actual film company. And so they did a couple of movies so they could be ready for 2008 to, mm-hmm. Or 2008, what was it, Clinton, 2008.
It was about Hillary Clinton. Yeah. It
was about Hillary Clinton, 2008, and that was the question that was in front of the court. They never put into the plaintiff's brief the question of whether the McCain-Feingold or whatever the official name was of it was legit, whether you could stop electioneering by folks who are explicitly trying to electioneer, as opposed to have an argument that they're putting out some type of media.
Yeah, but I think the challenge is,
the facts of the case
the challenge
is irrelevant because
let him get his point out.
Ignored the facts of the case and went even further to where they needed to go. And Roberts actually wanted to do the narrow ruling and just rule on that case. And the rest of them said, no, we're not doing that. And off to the races, he capitulated.
Sure. I think the issue is figuring out what electioneering is. I think that was the complicated part of it, that what kind of media could be released prior to a run-up to an election that would be considered electioneering or not. If somebody wanted to publish...
There was an easy test for this, and that is the entity formed to produce media? And the way you measure that is how much media have they put out over the course of, you want to say 3 years is a reasonable time prior to it, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 1 year, 18 months, whatever it is. And that's the way you you determine, is this an actual media enterprise or is it not? And there's ways, you could say the standards that you could use are arbitrary or whatnot, but that is a very easy.
I don't think it's a very easy question. If Christopher,
hypothetical,
sure, 2024 rolls around and Nolan decides that he wants to do a film attacking Trump the entire time, and he's going to put Christopher Nolan, a film director, did Inception and all that.
We're actually kind of dealing with that. It's not Christopher Nolan, but it's the Apprentice film.
He decides he wants to put out a film.
The Winter Soldier, Sebastian Stan.
That's just basically a massive attack campaign against Trump, and he's got he raises $400 million for this biopic, massive thing. I think conservatives will look at that, assuming we still have that 2002 Bipartisan Campaign Act or whatever, or the financing thing, and they go, well, hold on, this is a campaign ad. This is ridiculous. You can't just go, wait, excuse me, I'm a filmmaker. This is my right to do this. It's like, okay, well, we want to form companies and make movies. No, you haven't had those companies long enough. I think that these questions, and I'm not trying to say I even agree or disagree.
Wait, based on that logic, then, did they actually do that to get that movie made? Because, now with the hindsight being 2020...
United was. And Roberts was willing to say Citizens United can show their ads because they have proven, just because they went into the film business, but they put out 2 films, they have a track record of it. I would say Nolan could do that, and I would say Citizens United could have done that too. But that's not what Citizens United, the case, is about. The case
we're talking about the broader implications of the case. This is
I'm not talking about the broader implication. I'm talking about the ruling in the case. The ruling in the case blew out the entire restrictions that we had on election.
Hold on, I thought you said your issue wasn't the narrow ruling of the case, it was the broader implications of the broader ruling that was made in the case.
There were broader implications of the case, but the case itself, look, there was the case that was subsidiary that went through the lower courts. And that was the question is, does Citizen United qualify as a media organization because they have put out 2 movies in anticipation of wanting to advertise for this anti-Hillary movie? That was the case until it got to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is not constrained by anything. And so they addressed a question that was not even brought up in the case, which is there any constitutional validity to the McCain-Feingold bill? And the answer they found was no, but no one asked that question. That was a question they posed to themselves, and they didn't need to.
Well, wasn't the issue with the Citizens United was that in order to give them a win on that case, they basically necessarily needed to flip that bill? Wouldn't they have to make a ruling on it, or?
They could make a ruling that because they had done 2 movies in the run-up between 2004 and 2008, that they now qualified as a media enterprise and that they could run advertisements for their documentary about Hillary Clinton.
So the precedent. So then the precedent here that you would have preferred to set is that any time a company wants to release a piece of media, it has to go through the courts to make sure they have the First Amendment right to do so, to make sure that they're a valid enough media company to do it.
Anytime a company wants to release a piece of media 60 days before an election, that is not release, but to advertise on television, on FCC airwaves, to advertise on television an ad about that media, they need to be a legitimate media company. And how do you establish that? They had a criteria. Have they produced films in the past? Have they produced media in the past? Mm-hmm. Have they had an operation where they have tried to make profit on those?
Yeah, funny enough, YouTube even does that.
There's a way to establish whether you have a business or
not. So then you're saying that the better route to go would be any time any company wants to advertise on FCC airwaves, 30 or 60 days, depending on if it's a primary or a federal election, that all of those are going to be challenged in court, and then the onus is on the person trying to exercise their First Amendment right. They need to go before court, and they need to prove to some arbitrary threshold, because it is going to be challenged a million different ways. Well, hold on, my company has actually produced 4 or 5 films. Oh, okay, well, what about the fact that your company was just acquired by somebody else? What about the fact that you're a major shareholder that just bought the company 45 days ago is somebody that isn't involved in that? Okay, well, there are a million different ways that case could go, and the idea that every single time somebody wants to advertise about a political issue leading up to an election, the U.S. courts are going to be the ones to decide whether you're allowed to exercise that First Amendment right or not. Hold on,
Destiny's got a point here.
I agree with you that we might.
Not truth.
I agree. No.
Yes, ignoring the existence of an apparatus to make that measurement that existed. In fact, that's why they were challenging that system.
Okay, hold on. I don't understand why you're pretending like it's such an easy test to figure out. Like, oh, well, we have this, boom, 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 and now we can decide. This is going to be something that's going to be argued. It's like fair use. This is going to be something that's going to be argued in front of a court every single time it comes up. The incentive is going to be there for people to take something. You can't do that. You guys haven't made enough of these films, or your films have all been propaganda, or you guys got funding from this conservative person. You're not a media company. You're just a propaganda outlet.
Oh God, could you imagine somebody actually sued XQC?
Like, these kinds of accusations are already made between super PACs and PACs, and
from. Now, all this is moot now because the Supreme Court made a much bigger ruling than they needed to. In fact, John Roberts, who had wrote the initial brief, was going to do a narrow one. He was convinced by the other members of the court, the right-wingers, to expand this and attack the entire McCain-Feingold law that existed. And so it's gone. And my point is, you can argue that there's no way for the law to determine any type of application as to whether something qualifies as one thing or another. It happens every single day, all across the country, by millions of, not millions, by tens of agencies across the country. But if you want to think that can't happen, that's fine.
Wait, what is tested across the country by tens of?
I didn't know what that court case was about. And Stephen, you didn't know.
Wait, hold on.
Okay.
You didn't know. You didn't understand it. You didn't understand, A, that the ruling was far greater than it
Obviously, the ruling is far greater than just the particular case, or we wouldn't be talking about super PACs, number one. Number two, I'm sorry, I don't believe that you knew the facts of the case. If you're willing to let the caller walk you through what was the narrow part of the case, and neither of you seem to have any idea what you were walking towards before the guy revealed, this is Citizens United. You're like, oh, and then you completely... So
go about it multiple times.
I don't care who you've talked to about the outcome of the case. That's different than the facts of the case. How many people have talked about Roe v. Wade without being able to name, tell me what a substantive right is, or tell me what substantive due process is, or tell me the difference between Casey and Roe. A lot of people don't know any of these things. So they talk a ton about these cases.
Irrelevant, because they didn't even decide on the facts of the case. They decided on the constitutionality of McCain-Feingold, and that wasn't even requested in the brief by the plaintiffs.
Okay, so yeah, the McCain-Feingold decision was the one that kind of argued that money in politics is free speech, by the way, just to remind everybody.
You understand the facts of the case?
I had to get reminded because I was sitting there
because of what that court did.
My bad. All right. Yeah, I had to remind myself because I was just like, wait a minute. I thought for sure that this was like more than just what they're arguing here, and it is kind of just simple.
So the idea that I did or did not know the facts, which I did, but the idea that I did not is completely irrelevant to the implications of that case.
Oh, okay. If you say so, Sam. Is there anything else you wanted to go over?
In many respects.
He was just over
it's
that.
Not unlike Dobbs.
Okay.
They didn't have to Roe v. Wade. Roberts wrote an opinion saying we just want to change the viability standard to 15 weeks so that Tennessee is okay. But they decided, and that 15-week thing becomes irrelevant. The facts of that case become irrelevant in Dobbs because they just decided we're going to change what the meaning of the Constitution is.
Well, the issue wasn't. The issue is not changing the meaning of the Constitution. I think the issue is that like when you're talking about that Dobbs case, I think that what's coming up is precedent from Casey, and the court decided that they didn't like that precedent, so they're going to overrule that. Not necessarily changing the Constitution.
No. Casey just changed the viability standard, and Roberts wanted to change the viability standard, and the court ended up overturning and getting rid of the right to an abortion, which had existed in the Constitution for 50 years.
Okay, so hold on. Sure, but they disagreed with the rationale for how they got that right from Roe. Right? Which, if you're talking about...
That wasn't the question. They could have answered the question that was in front of them.
Courts do broad rulings sometimes. Sam, a court doesn't only do narrow rulings. There are times when the Supreme Court will make broad watershed rulings on things. Like
exactly. That's the point of Citizens United, not what that company did.
Sure, of course that's the point. But I think in order to talk about the broad rulings, I think it's important to understand the narrow case as well. Because sometimes the difficult broad decisions come from difficult facts surrounding a narrow case.
It is excused.
Yeah, but that's... For Citizens United, that's almost like justifying like their ruling. Like, I understand what Sam is saying, like, and his problem with the fact that they could register as a media company just by making 2 videos and all of a sudden they're a media company. But they don't have to go through any of the, checks that like a Fox News even has to go through, which Fox News, up until the Dominion lawsuits, was still registered as an entertainment corp. When they finally were like, shoot, we are getting caught reporting the news. I guess we have to be, a little bit more objective in our reporting and actually, register as a news corporation.
To change the meaning of the Constitution.
I mean, that's what the Supreme Court does every single time it makes a ruling or something, is it changes the Constitution. That's
Stephen, you don't know what you're talking about.
The Supreme Court exists to determine whether or not a law is violating the Constitution. Necessarily, every time they make a decision, they are interpreting or adding or taking away from the interpretation of the Constitution. That's what the Supreme Court does.
They will often take cases just because there's an argument between different circuit courts on statutory meaning.
Sure.
Yeah, that's
which is not the Constitution.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, look,
there might be.
Yeah, they just this last term they took up some really dumb cases that had some really broad implications. Like, we were going back to Section 230 again, and it was just based on the fact that there was a circuit court that disagreed with the ruling of another federal judiciary.
These statutory cases
understands if you have any lawyers in your audience
that want to argue about Citizens United.
No. You're just going to know that you don't understand what you're talking about.
I've talked to a ton of lawyers over this, but if that's your takeaway from this, that's fine.
All right. Well, I think this was healthy.
Yeah, I enjoyed the conversation. I love talking to you. I hope you don't hate me. Regardless of the cum guzzling accusations, I get a little fired up. But
it was really more just I was more offended about the idea that I would be of somebody shooting somebody.
Gotcha. All right. Well, hey, listen, I appreciate the conversation, everybody. Okay.
All right.
Yeah, he was also just kind of showing like how juvenile you are, because legitimately your biggest thing was like, oh, he wants to guzzle the cum of
I appreciate it.
of the leftists that would be okay with this. I don't need to. Oh, well, let's be fair.
Jesus Christ.
Well, that's how you, that's how you know that you lost. Because Sam was just kind of like, okay, well, here I got some bullet points of some things that you have said, and yeah, Destiny really couldn't stand behind a lot of it, because I think that Sam was kind of right, where he didn't really understand fully what he was talking about, especially with the Citizens United case. I think that, yeah, Destiny did, I hate to even say it, but he had some points on the Rittenhouse thing a little bit, but the broader points that Sam was making, going back to just how he did ignore laws, that were in place to make sure that he didn't have that gun. And yeah, him crossing state lines was a fact. Again, his legal residence was in Antioch, Illinois, and then he went to Kenosha, Wisconsin. That just is factually him crossing a border with an illegal weapon underage. Just saying. So, but anyway, yeah, I wasn't necessarily mentally prepared to revisit the Kyle Rittenhouse case, but yeah, as I said earlier in the video, that this had come up on the Majority Report recently, so it kind of turned me onto this and figured, well, why not? But this definitely solidified the case for me just continuing to not really watch Destiny content. I'm not really the biggest fan. I've done, I think, one other video, and it's only because his debates are just interesting, and sometimes he does make good points. So I always appreciate a good debate. But if you enjoyed this content, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subs, so I really appreciate you guys being here and checking this out. So I will see you in the next one.